All right, welcome everybody as we are on the hour. We are very excited to kick off our monthly free webinar where we're going to share with you ways to force 5 more turnovers and make 5 more threes per game. We did not say take, we did say make. You might think it's a bold statement, but I believe we will follow through. I'm Tyler, this is my teammate Claire. We are SAVI Coaching, and we are excited to work with you. So as people kind of filter in here, I would invite you to type into the chat box just your name and where you're dialing in from, whether you're dialing in live or you're reading this, or when you see the recording, just put your name and where you're dialing in from. I'm putting my name in right now, coming in from Phoenix, Arizona. Claire, how about you maybe kick it off and share with them both where you're dialing in from today and maybe one celebration, celebration of coaching impact or learning over the past month as we've been taking coaches through our cohorts.
I would love to. I'm tuning in from Wilmington, Ohio. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful day today. And I'll celebrate our commit coaches. They have just been awesome to work with. I love that we get to go way deeper with them. Like the cohorts are awesome and getting to spend time with, 10 coaches for an hour a week, but the coaches that are at that commit level and get to dive in one-on-one conversation. I think I've loved getting to know them. It's great seeing the growth that we've seen in them, and just seeing the impact far and wide between high school, college, men's, women's. The range and the depth of impact has been really cool over the past month.
Yeah, absolutely. And I celebrate everything we've done with helping them clarify exactly what they want to grow in. I mean, every coach we talk to is like, I want to grow, I want to learn. And yet when it comes down to a plan for how to do so, a lot of coaches fall short, and Claire, you do a great job helping them with that. One phrase that I'll share with everyone right now that has actually been a guiding principle over the last 4 weeks as we have trained all of our SAVI coaching members in getting new teaching tools is this. It's from The Art of War by Sun Tzu, and it's really what you're doing right now. If you're investing the time to become better as a coach for your team, Sun Tzu said this. He said, victorious warriors win and then go to war, whereas defeated warriors go to battle and then try to win. And that just, I think, summarizes so much coaching. Is we're like, okay, let's go play this game and try to win this game. And I'm going to try to make adjustments, and I'm going to try to, bring passion and energy. You are a defeated warrior because you're going to battle and trying to win. Whereas what we're doing right now, putting systems in place, prioritizing, getting a clear plan of action, is what a victorious warrior, or in this case, a victorious coach or leader would do. Is we're winning first, and the outcome of the battle will most likely be decided by what you do in practice prior to that 32-minute or 40-minute game. And so on that note, I want to celebrate Coach Peter Sabiti, one of our victorious warriors. It's been a pleasure to work with him. One of our college coaches that I'm working with. He actually just sent me a film from his first practice, and we've been preparing for months. And Peter has shared this, and it'll segue directly into us delivering for you these ways to create 5 more turnovers and make 5 more threes. He said this is the most uncomfortable season in all his coaching career he's ever had, but the one he's also the most excited about, because he has been on a journey to transform the way he approaches teaching the game to his team. And Peter, you might be even listening live or recorded, but I celebrate you because your practice looked efficient. It had clear objectives. You didn't try to fix every problem for the players, but you saw them improve because of the constraints that you developed in the clear objectives. I celebrate you, Peter, and that's really what we're about at SAVI Coaching, is whip coaches to transform their programs so that they can have a joy-filled experience and create systems that give them compound interest and results. And so I'll give a quick framework, and then Claire and I are going to popcorn back and forth between how to make more threes, because I'm a shooter, and how to get more turnovers, because Claire is a lockdown defender, and we're going to operate in our strengths, as should your players operate in their strengths, and we'll talk a little bit about that today as well. In the book Range, and if you have not yet read Range, I highly recommend that you read the book Range. In the book Range, the author names two different schools of thought or traditions, approaches to games. And he calls these two types of games kind and wicked games. A kind game would be one where patterns tend to repeat themselves. And the ability to execute the exact same pattern, the exact same motion, the exact same read, the exact same swing over and over and over again at a really high level is what makes you world class. That's a kind game. There's not a lot of variation. There's not a lot of dynamic change in the game. It's kind. Examples of kind games would be golf or chess. So to be an amazing golfer, you can take the Tiger Woods approach from a very young age. To be a grandmaster in chess, you can take a lot of the Eastern European approaches with children from a very young age, where they memorize books of openings and mid-games and closings and be very, very successful. Unfortunately, a kind approach doesn't work well for what the author calls wicked games. A wicked game being one that is very dynamic, often changing, with patterns not often repeating themselves. Soccer is a wicked game. Basketball is a wicked game. Now, here is what the author proposes and what studies have shown. In North America, a coaching tradition, which all of you on this recording live and recording are a part of, we are a part of the North American coaching tradition. The sport, the game with the most successful and most vocal coaches has been American football. American football is a kind game, whereas there are starts and stops and resets, and there's a limited amount of offensive and defensive patterns, where if you can specialize in a single position, a single role, and a single read, you can be really, really effective. And that has created our traditional coaching approach to a wicked game of basketball. Most coaches, most of you on this call, without even knowing it, have a kind approach to a wicked game. You believe that by doing A over and over and over and over again with the same reps with this one type of thing, whether it be shooting or whether it be defense, whether it be your shell drill, whether it be how you guard next to the ball, or whether it be how you set your feet and what footwork you use, you have a kind approach. This same thing can be applied over and over and over again and be effective. Unfortunately, that is a false assumption. That is a blind spot. And that's what is they take a traditional approach to kind games and try to apply it to a wicked game, and that your players don't find the same success in games that they do in practice. Oh, gosh, I'm talking for a long time. Let's get to the 3-on-3. No, one more. Okay. Recently presenting at a coaching clinic, and Claire's heard this. She was at the clinic. We won't say names. I was recently presenting at a coaching clinic. A Division I coach said that for the first 20 minutes of practice, they practice shooting in this way, and they track it and they measure it. And over the course of the season, in practice shooting in this way, a very kind way, they see drastic improvement, and their players get to shooting 85% in their warm-up shooting in practice. And then he said this. He said, now we see about a 30 to 40% drop-off between practice and games, though. And at that point, I threw out everything he said. I said, then it's useless. If there's a 30 to 45% difference or drop off between your training and your gains, then your training is wrong. Apply that to everything, coaches. Gosh, I'm getting fired up. I didn't expect to be this fired up. So that is savvy coaching. And that is what we're going to share with you today, is 3 ways to adjust your approach to defense and teaching shooting to eliminate a traditional or an easily fragile or breakable kind approach. It's like, oh gosh, if we don't do things exactly, we will break. Our defense will break down. Because it didn't happen exactly like we practiced it. That's a fragile approach. Here at Savvy, we have a wicked approach. We have an anti-fragile approach to teaching. share 3 ideas for you on how to make more threes and how to force more turnovers that are gonna sound different, but I want you to know why. It's because of the tradition you come from. And it's because of the commitment that we have to being anti-fragile as we teach. And so that being said, I'm going to actually let, because I've been talking for a while, Claire, go ahead and kick it off. But if there's anything that you want to highlight or associate with what I just shared, feel free to take that away. In fact, before you take it away, let me ask this question for everyone in the chat box. Please either put a Y for yes or an N for no. If yes, you have in your past used a lot of kind approaches, static approaches to teaching. No, if you had a very non-traditional, small-sided games approach, a European soccer approach. Y for a kind approach, and N for a wicked approach. All right, Claire, go ahead and take it away as I kind of monitor the chat box. And I'll be the first to put a yes in the chat box, as I cannot tell you how many times I did 2-line passing, back and forth, chest passes, just focusing on snapping that wrist and getting those thumbs down, which would be an
So kind. So kind. Trying to be more wicked over here. No, I love that. That's great framing. No, for some framing on the 3 reasons that I'm going to talk about why people don't force turnovers, it's all related to why. Like, why do turnovers happen? So I'd love if people are still typing in the chat, like, what do you think causes turnovers? What are some things? Like, why do they happen? How do you create them? On offense, on defense, like, what is going on in those situations? I'll give it a second. I don't know if you see any coming through, Tyler, but
yeah, I just typed it in there as well. What do you think causes turnovers? And asking people to drop it in the chat box. And maybe I'll just kind of be the first to go, and I'll even share what most coaches tell me they think causes turnovers, which is pressure. Pressure causes turnovers. Common one. Jordan said when the offense gets uncomfortable. Brian said when the offense is forced to make quick decisions. Okay. D. Wells, ball pressure, volatility on defense. Jennifer says speed. Really appreciate all the interaction here in the chat box. I'll pause there. Claire, go ahead.
Perfect. No, those were a lot that were on my list, and I think these 3 tips, which I'll start with one, I won't get ahead of myself, are going to address all of those. So first is that disorganization, right? The reason people don't get more turnovers is because they don't have clear roles. The offense knows where they're going, right? They have a spot. The point guard goes here. I'm running to the corner. I'm bolting up the floor. Like, they know exactly what they're going to do, where they're going, and defense has to react traditionally. But if you have roles, then the roles know where to go. It takes away that slow transition. It takes away some of the confusion. It takes away from thinking too much. Where's my player? You don't know because they're running away from you. But if you're just going to a spot that doesn't move, you know where the elbow is, you can get there faster and you can adjust. Like, roles allow players to understand their position better. They feel at home in their area, which allows them to see more, understand the advantage, and playing passing lanes. So if you can just get to a spot and you trust your teammates are also going to be playing their role, you are going to create that disorganization. You're going to fight your own disorganization while creating more for the offense, then increasing pressure, increasing stress for them. So it just adds up. So if you want another turnover, you need to clarify transition roles.
Really good. And can I riff on that real quick, Claire?
Please do.
Okay. Coaches, you've all heard this. Good offense beats good defense. Claire, you've heard that phrase before?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. And I say, why? Why does good offense beat good defense? Well, here's why good offense beats good defense, coaches. And this is the mindset shift that Claire is sharing with you that will help you create 5 more turnovers a game if you adopt this mindset. Good offense beats good defense because traditional defense reacts to the offense. That's what Claire just said. What we teach in the lock left defense, the principle that we teach in the lock left defense is we play offense on defense. We're forcing the opponent to react to us. And that's what's non-traditional. And using roles is we're not going to wait and see what you do on offense to decide who we're matching up with and how we're, no. We are playing offense on defense. We're attacking you in this way every time. You got to react to us. And if you, like, oh my gosh, we don't even need to give them point 2 and 3, honestly, Claire. Now, we're gonna, like, over the next 4 weeks into our cohorts, Claire and myself will take you through like the specifics of how do you play offense on defense, how do you have transition roles so that you're attacking and dictating in transition, which is traditionally a weakness for defense. But like that's the lock left answer that Claire just shared with you is, we establish roles that don't change regardless of what you do because we're not reacting to you. We are attacking you in transition. And then the details of all 5 defensive roles in our lock left transition. It is amazing as we've had the chance to even just put this in with our youth girls teams in 1 practice a week and how it completely disrupts what opponents are trying to do. I can't imagine what you could do with a full 5 days of practice. All right, Claire, anything else on roles and playing offense on defense before we shift over to the first way to make 5 more threes?
Yeah, I'll give one more piece of context of my experience putting this in and the success that we saw in doing that when I was coaching at the University of Ottawa. And our best year when I was coaching there, we made it to the Final Four, got bronze because in Canada we give medals for 3rd place in the country. I love it, I appreciated that. But that year, we limited transition possessions, which had the highest, we noticed that it has the highest points per possession. When teams are coming at us and trying to score in that way, they have more success than in other situations. But we limited transition shots to 2% of possessions, just because a traditionally disorganized time of the game, we chose to be exceptionally organized. So when we were exceptionally organized, there was no advantage. We lowered their PPP 2% of the time. They had that, but it led to a lot of success for us.
Yeah, I love that phrase. You became organized in a disorganized part of the game, right? You became really, really good and really clear and really, you executed really well in a wicked environment. Coaches, you have a blind spot. And, I say this lovingly. Both Claire and I really enjoy this author, Brene Brown, where one of the lines that she says is, clarity is kindness. And so we try to be very, very clear to the coaches we work with about their possible blind spots because we believe that's kind. What's unkind is to see someone's blind spot and let them continue to fall into the traps. Clarity is kindness. So let me be really clear, coaches. You probably spend more time teaching the most organized parts of the game and less time teaching the most disorganized parts of the game because it's easier to teach. We all gravitate towards things in life that we're better at, right? If we're better at a game, we want to play that game. If we're worse at a game, like, I don't like that game. Pickleball sucks, right? So like we gravitate towards things we're good at. And so coaches, like if it's easier to teach something that's very organized, our half-court defense and rotations when we're set up, our sets and quick hitters. It's easier to teach, and so we tend to prioritize and focus more on the things that we feel like we can have more of an impact and control over. But you're fooling yourself, coach, if you spend most of your time on the most organized parts of the game, because that's not where the game is won and lost. The game is won and lost in the wicked environments, the most disorganized, and we know that transition defense is the most disorganized moment of defense. So dominate it. All right, excellent. Claire, anything else on that before we jump over to some shooting?
Let's get buckets.
Let's get some buckets. Point number 1, the first way to make 5 more threes per game is simple.
Turn 10 5s into 7s.
Turn 10 5s into 7s. Okay, let's define some terms. We got to define some terms so we can understand. My SAVI coaches already know this, but a review is always helpful because, all right, I won't go into that. A 5 is a SAVI term that we use to designate shot quality simply for all of our players. And remember, clarity is kindness. If you are not clear to your players about their shot quality, you are being unkind to them when you sit them and they don't know why. When they don't get to shoot as much and when they don't know why. They don't know how to fix it. Clarity is kindness. A 5. If you take a 5 and you turn it like this and move it like that, it's just meh. It's so-so. It's mediocre. A 5 is a so-so shot. It is defined by one of 3 things, not even all of these 3 things: contested, off balance, or sped up. Any shot that's taken that's contested, off balance, or sped up, which often the closer one gets to the basket to shoot, the more likely you're going to be contested, the more likely you are going to be sped up by that contest and by the drive, or the more likely you're going to be off balance as you're attempting to avoid defense, because that's where most of the defense are, is by the basket. 5s tend to be closer to the basket. Well, a 7 is what we define as a wide open, off the catch, not off the dribble, 3 by a green light shooter, someone who's earned their shooting license. That's a 7, okay? High clarity is kindness, okay? Now, on that we've worked with, shots per game, okay? High school programs that we work with, they're playing a little bit faster than most teams, take about 70 shots per game. And I averaged 10 of our programs, all the shots they 5s, so-so shots that were somewhat contested, somewhat sped up, or somewhat off balance. What percent of all 70 shots were 5s? I want you to type in the chat box right now. Last season, what percent of the shots your team took last season were 5s? Please put a percentage.
I have got the percentage written down here of 10 of our
teams. Claire, as you're thinking back to your Ottawa University coaching days, what percent of your team's shots on the offensive end would you say were 5s?
The worst year, 50. The best year, 25.
Yeah. All right, so here is, and I think that's a solid range. So this is the high school level. 63% of all shots taken by these 10 teams at the high school level. D. Wells just put in 65%. I don't know if you waited for me to say 63. No, I don't think you did. But at the high school level, that's very common. Okay, so if more than half of the shots that your team's taking, I get another 65% by Brian here. It's a popular number. If more than half of these shots are 5s, here's what you do. So you have 40, let's say 40 out of 65 shots taken. 40 shots your team took last year were 5s. The simplest way to make 5 more 3s per game is to eliminate 10 of your 5s and turn them into 7s. Eliminate 10 of those off balance, sped up, or contested shots and turn them into 7s. And I guarantee you will make a much higher percentage of those 7s. You will make, because you're taking and because they are 7s, you will make 5 more 3s per game. And what this is going to turn into in actual points, I did the math for you based on the average of a 38% 3-point shooting team on wide open off the catch 3s. What that's going to turn into for you is 12 more points per game. Think about how many more games you would win if you could generate 12 more points per game just by changing the clarity and kindness you have with your players on turning 10 5s into 7s. Now, how do you actually do that? Well, that's what we're going to be going through over the next month with our cohorts. We're going to be talking about the drills, the vocabulary, the language, the measurements, how to establish the shooting licenses so that your team gets really, really clear on what's a 5, what's a 7, and if you can shift your shot selection, be delighted with the results. Let me share one graphic with you here.
This is a national graphic. Can you see that graphic there, Claire?
Okay. You got it? All right, cool. So this is an example, okay, of points per shot by a zone and contest. Okay, so if we look at this, is broken down, all sevens or all threes are broken down into corners and above the break. And really, one reason why corner threes go in at a higher percentage than above the break, beyond them just being a little bit, is they are usually more open. Corner threes tend to be more open than above the break threes because help rotates off, and there tends to be more on balance and less contested. Okay, but all that being said, these other twos, right? This is everything that's going to be off balance, everything that's most likely to be highly contested and most likely to be sped up, because most mid-range stuff is that. Now, I'm not against the mid-range. I just want to shift for most of your players. Think about if you were to shift 10 shots from 0.8 points per shot to closer to 1.1, 1.2 points per shot. That's how you score 12 more points per game. It's just in the shift. You don't have better shooters. You don't have a better offense. You just shift. And we'll work with you guys on how to do that if you are going to be a part of our shooting cohort, our team shooting cohort. All right. At any point, as we shift back over to Claire for the second way to generate more turnovers per game. At any point, if you got a question, and Jordan, I'll get your answer here in a moment. If you have any questions, drop them into the chat box, and we will get to them at the end. We'll kind of collect them at the end. All right, Claire, let's keep moving here. Second way to generate 5 more turnovers this season.
Yeah, do the opposite of what you just said, basically. Defense, if you can get more 5s instead of 7s, that's fantastic. You're gonna stop the offense. But no, in seriousness though, you're not getting the turnovers you want because you're letting the other team run their plays. You know, you're opening up, you're playing square, you're zigzagging in transition, you're letting them set up maybe without pressure, you're not in passing lanes, you're letting them run their plays. If you want deflections, if you want steals, if you just want bad shots, you have to get the offense where you want them, not where they want to be. This is just another aspect of playing offense on defense, of controlling the game. How to force turnovers in the first point was about pace, right? Transition is pace. If you can get rolls, be where you want to be, you're controlling the pace. In the half court, it's about space. So if you want more turnovers, you need to shrink the floor. So same math that Tyler's talking about is, say you have, 70, 75 possessions. If you know that points per possession on the left side are about, 0.2 less, like they score 0.75 on the right side and 0.5 on the left side, points per possession, that's a range of 20 points almost. And that may be from a deflection, it may be from a steal, it may be from just a bad shot because you're increasing the speed, the pressure, the comfortability of what they want to do. So if you want some turnovers, you need to shrink the floor.
That's good. And here's the beauty of shrinking the floor. Weaker players need more time and more space in order to be effective. And only the absolute best players can be effective in limited time and limited space. Most of your opponents don't have those players because neither do you. Neither do you. And so instead of trying to react and go through, and gosh, I don't think I'm getting into your last point. For every opponent reacting, here's what they do on offense, here's their baseline inbounds play, here, that's reactive. You've already lost. See point 1, victorious warriors win first, then go to battle, whereas
Proactive versus
lock left defense at its core, its principle, it is a proactive attacking, we play offense on defense system. So we don't care what the opponent runs, they don't get to run it. They have to react to us, and then we've already won the war because they're playing our game. Like, that's it. And the way
they can react is,
like Claire said, by shrinking the floor. One of the
finish up learning
in lab, and this is a great example of that, is, man, I doubt that we're going to
your Division I recruit, all-star point guard. Well, when in doubt, zoom out. And don't try to react to taking away the fact that,
she can break down any of your players off the dribble, or they run really good high ball screens. You're reacting. You've already lost. Instead, be proactive and completely take away, play offense on defense and make them react to you. And they're like, oh my gosh, what do we do when they're building a cross wedge in transition with 3 players squeezing, putting it to jail? What do we do about that? They're reacting to us. It's called changing the paradigm. I'm a big reader, and I'm book, which was made into a terrible movie called Ender's Game, but the book was amazing, by Orson Scott Card, Ender's Game. And this genius, this generational genius that saves the human race by his tactics and whatnot. When he's training, his whole approach, they couldn't beat him in this very wicked game, and his whole thing was to change the paradigm. Whenever he was losing, whenever he was outmatched, whenever the opponent was better, he had to change the paradigm. He had to completely change the game. So if your opponent is ever better than you at something, don't play them in that thing. Change the game, right? If they're better than you in space, change it and don't allow any space. If they're better than you in execution, change it. If they're better than you at rebounding, change it. Force turnovers, not miss shots, right? Like, change the paradigm. And that's what the lock left is, and that's what Claire's sharing. And I guess I do like defense. All right, point number two on how to make more threes, 5 more threes per game. Tweak your player's shot in season. Tweak, or the language that we use at SAVI, is tune up. Tune your player's shot all season long. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who is an elite baseball player, and he doesn't know anything about basketball. And I was talking with him about preparing for this webinar, and I shared this belief that I have, that you should not change a player's shot in the middle of the season. That players shouldn't work on their form or their technique in the middle of the season. That's an off-season thing. Or, oh man, they're a senior, don't want to work with them on their shot. In fact, let's just be honest here. Please put a Y in the chat box if you or a staff you have worked on in the past has said, hey, we don't want to mess with players' shots in the season. Put an N if you're all about messing with shots. Put a Y. Okay, Claire's raising her hand. Put a Y if, yes, in the past we have not wanted to mess with players' shots in the season. I won't stop and read off all the Y's that are going to pour in to the chat box, because I know that it's the case. So this high-level baseball player was flabbergasted. He's like, what? Basketball coaches don't tweak their players' shots in season? He said, in baseball, that's all we do. He's like, the entire season, all you're doing is tweaking your swing to get a little bit better, because you got to improve your batting average by like 0.001. He's like, that's so stupid that you wouldn't tweak a shot. He's like, that's the only way we got better. And I was like, thank you. I'm glad there's some sports that get it right, okay? Not only is it baseball that tweaks swings in the season, it's pros that tweak their basketball shooting technique in season. It's only the lowest level players and the lowest level coaches that are afraid of improving in the midst of competition. Whereas like the highest level trainers and the highest level players are getting in the lab in the middle of the season. Again, I won't mention names, but I've got a friend that trains an NBA All-Star. And multiple times within the season, he actually trains 2 NBA All-Stars, all NBA players, first teamers. And multiple times in the season, he will get a call. One time I was with him, he got a text. He's like, I got to get on a plane to so-and-so city. We got to go get in the lab. Okay, we got to work on some shooting for him. He's lost his pocket. And what we do with our SAVI shooting system is we help you clearly identify the pre-practice time so that all of your players are actively tuning their shot, not just at a moment in the season when they're slumping, but proactively throughout the entire season. Because the ability to shoot equals the ability to create space. When you create space on offense, it's good for you. When you take away space on defense, it's good for you. And so that is why we believe in tweaking shots. And we're going to take you through over the next month, if you choose to join us in our shooting cohort, exactly how you build out the pre-practice tune-up so that you can invest the first 20 minutes of every single practice in making more threes per game. I got an email from a coach at the end of last season that implemented this. They improved their three-point shooting percentage by 14%. They had been hands off with player shots. Like, nope, that's on the player. That's their individual. We don't want to be held responsible for messing up their shot. So we never talked about it. We just did some team shooting stuff, but no individual shooting development in the season. They adopted the pre-practice, 20 minutes every single practice, individual shooting, and saw a double-digit percentage improvement in their three-point shooting percentage, making 8 more threes per game, scoring more points than they've ever scored. So I encourage you to do what the pros do, and continue to tune shots throughout the season. Yeah, thank you for your answers. Yeah, everybody, and D. Wells, thanks for putting in there from Federal Way, Washington. I'm a Washington guy all the way up in Blaine, Washington, but now down in Phoenix, Arizona. All right, Claire, over to you. I feel like we're doing really well for time. Over to you for the third way to force 5 more turnovers per game.
We're controlling the pace. It's really good.
We are controlling the pace. Yes, we are being proactive. We are victorious warriors.
Indeed. Well, before I reveal this third one, which is definitely my favorite, not just because number 3 is my favorite number, but just it's the best and it's applicable to so many things. I'll tell you a story. Is one of my roles as the assistant coach when I was coaching at Ottawa was tracking on the bench, did some different stats, 2 of which were how many times did we cross on the left hand side of the floor or get the offense to. So defensively, how much of the time are we initiating, getting the opponents to initiate their offense on the left hand side. The other one was how many times is it getting back to the right. And this was where big epiphany happened, is we found that even though we were running the lock left, we're used to this, we have 50-year players, all these different things, there were still about 10 to 12 possessions a game where it's just getting back to where they want to go, letting them run their plays. But it was this fear we found. We talked to the girls, we were like, hey, we can't, this is giving up points, just they're getting where they want to get to, high percentage shots. And the girls were just afraid to be in passing lanes. Our deny position was just not there. It was really a facade. And that fear was really holding us back. So once we realized that, we got it up to a point where, 90% of the season, we're in the same formation. We're committing to being in deny, turning more chest the ball. We let go of the fear. And I would argue that one of the reasons you're not getting more turnovers is because you're playing with fear or coaching with fear. It may be you, it may be the players, but a lot of the time that fear of a low percentage thing, don't let them score, don't let them go back door, what if we get blown by, all these things, it's this fear of a low percentage shot. How hard is it to actually get back door, make a clean pass, get a clean bucket where there's no help in the way? It happens. It does. You might get scored on once a game in that way. But the fear of a low percentage shot was allowing our opponents to get more high percentage shots. We had to flip it on its head. And this is where, oh my gosh, I just get so excited. How lock left defense, playing in a savvy way, smart, tough, clever. You can apply it to offense, you can apply it to shooting, you can apply it to life. This fear of a low risk thing is keeping you from high rewards. You can get more turnovers, however they look, if you just commit. Trust, confidence, clarity, unity, success. That is what happens when you let go of that fear and commit to a defensive identity. So if you want more turnovers, you got to be bold and you need to commit to that identity.
Man, I'm writing down, that was just an absolute stunner of a line. Fear of low risk things is keeping you from high rewards. It's so true. And that's what I love about basketball, sport, coaching in general, is it's just a microcosm for life as well. I mean, think about how many times in relationships and in work, your fear of a low risk thing is keeping you from higher rewards, which is a really good thought experiment here. And let's go ahead and do it, actually, Claire. There's so many scenarios that we could apply this to in defense. Was speaking with a coach on Twitter, actually, who is all into the lock left. He's an assistant coach at a really successful high school program. He says, I'm all about the lock left. I've been trying to get my head coach to adopt it for years, but he's just so concerned about opening up our stance too much and getting blown by for straight line drives. He's so afraid of that he hasn't allowed me to pull the trigger and put him in. What can I do to convince our head coach to put it in? And I said, honestly, nothing. I'm not in the business. If I have to convince somebody to put it in, I don't want to work with them anyway, or I don't want them to, because if you have to convince someone and like twist their arm to put it in, the first time that they get blown by on a straight line drive left, he's like, this sucks, and it's gone. So what a waste. Let's not even go all in or move on. Like, do something you believe in and you're willing to lose over, because everything's going to fail at times. Here's our thought experiment. Okay, so you use back doors. Let's do a thought experiment about back doors. So this is the incorrect way to make a decision. There's another really good book called Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke, which I think is imperative for every coach to read, to help you make better decisions and just database decisions that aren't going to be hindered by fear. Okay, so the wrong way to think about this would be, if we hunt the pass and more aggressively deny, we're going to give up back doors. And if we give up a back door, this is a bad bet. That's the wrong way to think about it. You're using what's called a straw man argument. The straw man, an unreal scenario, is a scenario where we give up 0 back doors. It's like, okay, if we hunt the pass to the right and don't allow the ball back right and give up back doors, let's say we give up 3 per game. Well, if we don't do that, we assume we're going to give up 0 back doors per game. That 0 is a straw man. It doesn't actually exist. Like, every one of you right now, coaches, right now, no matter what defense you run, you give up back doors per game. I don't know how many, but I guarantee it's more than 0. And you probably give up 4 to 5 back doors per game where your players just ball watch, zone out, miss, whatever. You give up 4 to 5 back doors per game. So if you're actually going to evaluate doing something, you need to eliminate the straw man argument and be like, okay, we currently give up 4 to 5 back doors per game. How many back doors per game will we give up if we play this way? Well, let's actually game it out and find out. Because if you are giving up the same amount of back doors as you already are, and yet, like Claire said, it will result in creating 2 to 3 more turnovers per game when you're hunting every pass to the right, well, that's a pretty good bet. So let's go ahead and game this out. And I'm going to ask this of the people in the chat box. And Claire, I'd love your honest response to this as well, because there's no right answer here. I asked this of another one of our coaching programs that we're working with right now. Okay, Claire, if you were to hunt the pass and play defense in such a way that it caused you to create 5 more turnovers per game, live ball turnovers, where you steal the pass, like a pick 6, but as a result, you also were going to give up 5 more back doors per game, 5 more turnovers and 5 more back doors, would you make that bet and play in that way? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Please put in the chat box the rest of the coaches. There's no right or wrong answer. You got to decide what you believe. Yes, if you would play that way. No, if you would not. Yes, if you would play that way. No, if you would not. So this coach that I was working with, I asked him this question, and his answer was no. He would not play that way. He would not give up 5 more back doors in order to get 5 more turnovers. And that's his prerogative. I don't agree with his math, but that's his prerogative. Most of you are saying yes. And here's why I don't agree with that math. A live ball turnover pick 6 is going to result, let's say that you miss one of your wide open breakaway lanes. Let's say the other one you mishandle and they recover and you only score 1 point per possession off that. That results in 7 more points per game, more or less. If we assume 3 breakaways, one we don't convert and one that we only convert half the time, 7 more points. Whereas if we force a back door, think about it, on 5 back doors, do we think they're going to score more or less than 7 points on these back doors? Because oftentimes the offensive player has no vision and misses it completely. That's what happens most often. And it will probably happen on all 5. But maybe one time they actually make the pass And there's a 50-50 chance on that pass that it turns into a layup or if it turns into just a rotation where we get into a closeout situation. Oftentimes on backdoor passes, especially if we have some ball pressure, it's actually a turnover, right? Like it's just a good bet. Like I would say, let's play this way to the moon. Let's get 60 possessions this way, where we're making a coin toss bet if we get a steal or force a backdoor, right? 50-50. And that is how I would encourage you guys to think about how you play defense, if you're willing to force turnovers or not, because most coaches, like Claire said, are afraid of the straw man. They're afraid of, oh, if we don't do this, we will give up 0 backdoors. I'm afraid of giving up more than 0 backdoors, but it's a straw man argument. Eliminate your fear, make a bet, and be bold with it. And make enough good bets. And that's what we teach in the Lock Left, and that's what Claire and myself will be taking coaches through very specifically. Here are good bets you can make in the Lock Left defense to force more turnovers. Here's how you train it, here's how you teach it, and here's how you measure it. So yeah, I think that's great. Anything more on that fear, eliminating the fear piece on defense?
I'll reiterate something that we talk about in the teaching tools cohort, and I think a lot we probably repeat it weekly because it's needed. Is just the coaching from the do.
Yeah.
Do hunt passes instead of don't get beat backdoor. Like whatever you want to commit to, whatever you're willing to bet on, coach the do. What do you want your players to do? Not what do you hope doesn't happen? And that's going to be more effective. Fear begets fear, and don't actually leads to that thing happening.
Yeah, that's really good. Okay, here it is. Last way to make 5 more threes per game. You know, honestly, if you just apply these 6 concepts, 3 and 3, without any more training, without any of the in-depth analysis and drill work and in-depth homework assignments and teaching that we take coaches through monthly, if you just apply these concepts, I believe you'll create more than 5 more turnovers and 5 more threes per game, just in your own way. And so I'm pumped up for all of you that are willing to eliminate the fear and coach in the world of do and be proactive and stop being reactive. It's not a very fun way to play and coach, to always be just dodging punches and just be getting battered all the time and like putting out fires and plugging holes in the dam. That is not a fun way to coach. That's not a fun way to lead or play a game. It's way more fun to be aggressive. Let's make mistakes of aggression and not make mistakes of fear. Number 3, eliminate team shooting drills. Eliminate team shooting drills. And there's some depends on this. There's some maybe on this. I was working with a coach that I said, how much time in practice do you spend on shooting? And the coach said, oh man, we spend probably like 30 minutes on shooting. In fact, we have this one 20-minute shooting drill that we do as a team, where as a team, we have 2 groups of whatever, 5 or 6, and we have to, as a team, make X amount of shots in 20 minutes or we run a sprint. And it was like, a line of people shooting from, the 5 spots around the perimeter. And he's like, yeah, we really measure our shooting with this 20-minute team shooting drill. And I said, clarity is kindness. I said, that's an absolute waste of time. It's an absolute waste of time for 3 reasons. And I believe that your team shooting drills are hindering your ability to make more threes for 3 reasons. Here is reason number 1. When you do team shooting drills, it allows players to slack off and hide. Like when you go for a long period of time where players are standing in the back of lines, when it's like all consolidated as a team, your measurements, you aren't getting good data and you're not getting into that powerful pocket of challenge that forces players to shoot in a game-like manner. Remember what I said at the beginning of the call. D1 coach is like, man, we've got like a 40% drop off between what they shoot in practice and what they shoot in games. It's because of the way that you're shooting in practice. Don't shoot in practice in a way that you wouldn't shoot in games. In a game, you don't get to stand in line. In a game, you don't get to go for 20 minutes. In a game, you don't shoot the same shot over and over and over again, right? In a game, you don't get to rely on a stronger shooter for your score. You have to make your shot. So that's number one, why you shouldn't do team shooting drills. Number two, why you shouldn't do team shooting drills. It's inefficient. Me, as a basketball player, I got the majority of my shots between the two lane lines on the top of the key, coming off of high ball screens, coming off of pin downs. I got the majority of my shots off of the move. I hardly ever got a standstill because the ball was in my hands most of the time. What a waste of time for me to spend 10 or 15 minutes in a team shooting drill where we're shooting corner threes off the catch. Inefficient because it's a wicked game, right? So if I practice in this kind environment, it's just not going to translate. Like, is there some correlation? Yeah, but we want to have as close to 100% transfer as we can. So when you do team shooting drills, you don't take into account the specific types of shots that each individual is shooting. And so if you were to structure your shooting instead to be roll shooting, which is something that we teach in our SAVI shooting system, where you have, your locks right here that are getting their sprint shots for corner threes in transition, of which they should each get 5 a game, right? You've got your rackers getting exit shots, of which they should get 3 to 4 per game. You got your dragons getting sprint shots because it's the types of shots they get in games. Don't do team shooting, do individual shooting. And lastly, the third reason why team shooting drills suck is because players never feel the amount of pressure or speed that they're going to feel in games. Like anytime you do a team shooting drill, you get to just kind of stand still, relax, take a deep breath, clear your mind, get comfortable, and just get locked in on my only job is to shoot. That doesn't happen in a game. In a game, you're sprinting back and forth, you're having to defend, you're having to move, like your mind's all crazed, you're under pressure in a game, whereas team shooting drills, you don't have the same thing. You want to try to eliminate team shooting drills for individual shot training, which happens at a separate time in your practice from your pre-practice tune-up, which we're going to give you the blueprint for your pre-practice tune-up, your individualized training within practice, and your post-practice testing so that you can know exactly who can shoot sevens over the next month as we go through the SAVI shooting system. Now, the SAVI shooting system is going to pull heavily on our 28-day individual shot transformation, but it's not going to be focused on that. It's going to be focused on how a team creates a shooting system throughout their practices so that they can take and make more threes than they ever have. So I'm excited. I'll do a quick review of my 3, do a quick review of your 3, Claire, then we'll answer any questions. Please type any questions you have into the chat box. We'll have about 4 to 5 minutes to answer any questions if you ask them. All right, 3 ways to make 5 more threes this season. Number 1, take 10 of your 5s and turn them into 10 more 7s. You'll be taking and making more shots and scoring 10 to 12 more points per game. Number 2, make sure that you continually tune, change, and improve individual shots in season. It's an absolute myth that you should only tune up a shot in the off season, because guess what? You're not with them in the off season, and most of them aren't in the gym as much as they should be. This is the best time where they are motivated to make shots. This is when you can improve, and there's few things you could that you should spend time on more so than individual shooting, because shooting wins games. Number 3, sub-team shooting drills for individualized shooting, and we call it shot training, when you're training your shots so you can get in an actual game. All right, over to you, Claire, for 3 ways they can summarize to get 5 more turnovers.
Let's do it. I'll take my own advice and coach from the do's, not tell you what you shouldn't do. So clarify. Number 1, clarify your transition roles, right? Be proactive, be organized when they expect you to be disorganized. Number 2, shrink the floor, get them in uncomfortable positions so that they're taking the shots that you want them to take. And then 3rd and finally, be bold and commit to your identity. Take that bet.
Beautiful. Let me read you this question. It's a lock left question from Jordan, and maybe we can tag team it. I'll let you take a shot at it first, and then I'll add anything that I think of. Jordan says, so when the ball does get to the right side of the floor in the lock left, and we are forcing them to drive left, what should the goal of the on-ball defender be? Part 1. Do you want to take that part 1?
Yeah, love to. So the goal, wherever it is on the floor, including this situation, we want to get it in jail or get it back to jail. And so that's, I think, one of the biggest misconceptions that we get from coaches, where it's like, oh, open line drives to the rim. But if you can get a bit of that horizontal, so kind of square, but not at the top, if you're on the right side, then you want to get them back kind of top of the key into more of your players who guide them further and further in that direction to jail, which is not open lane left, but more so corner sideline left.
Yeah, and could you even be real clear, because I don't think a lot of the coaches watching and might not know jail, because they haven't gone through the whole course, which you can get the whole course at lockleft.com if you want to really dive into the most recent version of the lock left. What's jail, Claire?
Yeah, so if you think of that space between the sideline and the 3-point line and the break, there's a nice little rectangle there. You lock them in that area. Can't do much.
Can't do much. And so, yeah, I think that's really good. And your second part of that question, Jordan, is like, do help defenders stunt and recover just like drives from the left? And, Jordan, it sounds to me like you should actually dive into the most recent version of the course, which has over 8 hours of teaching on this, because as you know, Jordan, that's a very nuanced question. So, in the lock left, we don't help. We skirmish or scram. We don't even use the term help, because we want to be so anti-fragile and anti-traditional. Instead, from what we call the gap, which is very similar to traditional definitions of the gap, you're never helping. You're skirmishing or scramming. If the defender on the ball is side by side with the ball, it's a skirmish, which you call a stunt and recover, where it's a fake help and you're actually not recovering to your player. This goes into hunting passes and making bets for turnovers. You're actually stunting at the drive, and then you are sprinting into the passing lane to steal a possible pass, one pass away to the left. We're not helping. Side by side skirmish. On a blow by, we scram. This is also not help. This is a switch. Help is where you bring two to the ball for a moment until the ball gets contained, and then you go home. That's help. We don't help. We skirmish or scram, which is a jump switch or a peel switch, which happens all the time in the lock left, because the more aggressive we are in the lock left, it actually turns into like a chase and scram situation, where the on-ball defender is speeding up the ball so much that they're chasing the ball to jail. And if the offensive player ever blows by the on-ball defender, they get their shoulders by, we scram and peel switch, where the on-ball defender then is going one pass away and the gap defender is now the on-ball defender. There shouldn't be helping, it should be skirmish or scramming. And that would be on all drives, anywhere on the floor, in a side-by-side or a blow-by situation. Jordan also asked this, Claire. And you can tell these questions. I think Jordan is a current or future lock left adoptee. When the ball is in the left corner, we'll call that jail. When the ball's in jail and it's driven baseline, let me pause there before I ask Claire this question. If the ball is driven baseline from jail, we failed. If the ball is driven baseline from jail, we failed. The goal is to put the ball in jail and keep it there, not let him out of jail. The left corner is where we want the ball. We don't want the ball on a baseline drive. So once the ball gets in jail, our on-ball defender is chest to the sideline and keeping it there. And we'd work it up and down that left sideline and keep it in jail before we'd allow a baseline drive. Now, do baseline drives happen? Occasionally, but less than you would think, honestly. Less than you would think, especially if you're not helping off of that baseline person. We're just skirmishing because we don't want to give up, one pass away threes. We want to skirmish and steal passes, or we're scramming that thing and someone's running right down into them. So if it does, let me go back to your question, because again, proactive. What you're even asking, Jordan, which is a good question to ask. I'm not making fun of your question, but I'm just identifying a paradigm. You're asking a reactive question, right? Like, what do we do when this happens? Okay, so the answer for a savvy coach is always zoom out and how do we let that thing happen less, as opposed to prepare for when that bad thing happens. It's like rotations, right? I get questions like this all the time. Hey, what's the rotation when this happens? I'm like, hang on. Why are you working on the rotation for when we break down? Why are you not working more on not breaking down? And I have yet to see a team that has gotten as much leverage out of breaking down less that they should actually move to working on what happens when we break down. And I mean, that's honestly a principle across the board. It's like every one of, and this is a fear thing again. If you're afraid of the breakdown, you're going to practice the breakdown. But if you eliminate the fear of the breakdown, instead just get better at not breaking down so much, you'll get more leverage out of that. So like, thanks so much for your question, Jordan, but it just identifies a paradigm that we're actually fighting against. That being said, can you stunt and recover with a help defender and stay attached instead of getting into help to help a rotation? Yes, and I think we've already answered that with like with the peel switch situation. You either skirmish or scram. We're not in rotation ever. It's two players involved, on the ball or on the wall. I'm skirmishing or I'm switching. I know I probably said that you got to answer that one, Claire, but I just went off. All right.
Yeah, I would have said. Can I add this one thing though?
Please.
I mean, you were mentioning like, right, principle-based answers and zooming out to the root of the problem or the root of the question, that it's like maybe you can ask your players as well, like the goal is to get it in jail. If it happened to get out of jail, no matter how that happened, what do they say? How can we get it back in there? And go through their options, and they're going to do what makes sense to them, or they're going to talk through what doesn't make sense. So that, first of all, and then I love when breakdowns happen because you just get back to the communication and like problem solving, where what do? You figure it out. Like, yes, we could dictate an answer, but if your team is so great at communication and knows the core principle of what you're trying to do, then you go from there and keep doing what you're doing. You're not reacting. You're playing based on your principles.
Yeah, really good. Principles are proactive. Brian just made a comment. This summer, his team had trouble breaking the habit of wanting to help on left-handed drives, and it led them into rotations. Yep. I love it. And you just identified, Brian, zoom out and don't help as much instead of working on your rotations. It's great. Coach Long, I really like this one, Coach Long. Okay, players one pass away to the right and denying in the non-traditional way, where it's chest to ball instead of back to ball. He said, where are they looking? Like, where are your eyes going? Which is a very, very good question, Coach Long. Where are your eyes looking? It's tough. Coach Long says it's tough for him to visualize not giving up an open layup. I get it. Three things, and I'll throw it to Claire. Okay. Thing number one, they're looking at the same thing a traditional deny stance would look at, which is ball and man. Like whether my chest is faced left or faced right, my eyes can see the same thing. It's just like being in denial on the opposite side of the floor. So the angle of your chest doesn't change the angle of your eyes. Your eyes are seeing ball and man. And we would actually prefer that for a split second they lose sight of their man as opposed to losing sight of the ball. Because the ball will indicate where your player is. Your player won't indicate where the ball is. Like the ball handler with their eyes and with the ball can indicate where the player is. And so if you lose sight there. So that's number one. Number two, the reason we're chest to ball is to be able to skirmish and scram more so than to be able to steal the pass. When our back is to the ball, if the on-ball defender does get beat right, we are not in position to skirmish or scram, and the entire defense has broken down and we might get into rotations. We want to be proactive. We're chest to the ball to discourage the drive right, and if there is a drive right, we're ready to skirmish at it or scram if they get beat. Number three, imagine, if you will, the top of a traditional 1-3-1 that has gotten the ball on one side of the floor, and they're playing in such a way where they're not allowing a pass to the other side of the floor that's a fast ball or a strike. It's got to be a lob pass or a slow bounce pass. That is how that player is playing, so that it gives that defender a chance to recover if a pass does go to the rim. The other thing that you need to consider, Coach Long, is the on-ball defender is sitting on that right hand, making it way more challenging to make that backdoor pass because of how we're playing on the ball. So hopefully that's helpful. Claire, anything to add to that one?
Yeah, I'd say as much as I think the lock left does improve on-ball defense, like one-on-one defense, I think it's also like you have to know that your teammates are there as well, that fear can be lessened by being chest to ball and in that lane, hunting passes, ready to skirmish or scram. But the fear is less because you know you have your teammates on the wall, like people who are more familiar with pack line D. Like there's people in the key. So even if they go there, you have not help, but you have teammates.
Yeah, that's good. And I appreciate that you said not help. Awesome. All right, let's end like this. I truly appreciate everyone that jumped on live to learn with us and will be watching recorded to learn with us. Claire and myself are honored to be able to work with coaches at all levels, and we're delighted how impactful it is and the success and joy that we're able to help bring to the game of basketball. I would like to personally invite every one of you, live or recorded, to come and join us for 1 month to invest in yourself and become a more savvy, a smart, tough, and clever coach. You'll get access to all of our online courses, the lock left course, race and space, our shooting system, but also every month we take a group of 15 to 20 coaches through a 4-week cohort where we direct them to a specific aspect of our content, provide coaching, feedback, support, assignments so that you can develop in an area of your coaching tool belt. This month, we have 2 options where we're diving in. Yeah, you're going to get all the content, anything you want, but we're diving into our shooting system and helping you develop your shooting system to make more shots than you ever made and to help direct you into how to implement and address any issues you have with the lock left defense or to implement aspects of the lock left defense. We would love for you to join us. Just head to SAVIcoach.com, SAVI coach.com, and join us for a month, and we hope to get to work with you. Claire, anything to add or anywhere to direct them?
Please sign up. I want to get to know your team. I want to help your program. It's so exciting. I love getting film each week, giving feedback, and then talking it through on the live calls. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, on behalf of myself and Claire and the whole Savvy coaching community, it's a pleasure hanging out with you. Until next time, stay savvy.